Good morning, West Ham fans. Russ of the West Ham Network. Happy Thursday. The weekend is almost upon us, and a West Ham free weekend being the international break. But as with all these things, the international break does give us time to just reset and readjust. And actually, it was Luke from the West Ham Network. He posted some clips from a David Bentley podcast he did for Under the Cosh, which sparked some real interesting discussions within the WhatsApp group, and I was like, do you know what? I've got to start writing got to put some notes down, because this was a really interesting subject, and I think it's a subject which I'm not the only one who feels like this. I hope, and according to the WhatsApp group, I'm not. Okay, football is now boring. Yeah, I've said it. The game we love is boring now. The chaos, the flair, the unexpected nature of football, it's not there anymore. It's turning into a cold, robotic routine. As a West Ham fan, I think it hits us harder than ever, because this club was built on entertainers. It was built on madness. It was built on players who would either score a worldie or two for their own teammate, and you didn't know which one was going to happen. And again, although it hits us harder, I generally think it's football in general. The money in the game has sterilized the enjoyment of the game from an entertainment perspective. We're 7 games into the Premier League season, or 7-ish now, and it feels like we've played 100. It's the same patterns, it's the same tactical masterclasses. When you've got Pep Guardiola parking the bus, it shows the game has changed. We have players like Pep, like Arne Slot, like Maresca, all very brilliant minds, don't get me wrong, but the game's starting to look like it's being played in spreadsheets, not in stadiums. Every team looks like a lab experiment. There's no spark, there's no chaos, there's no instinct anymore. And the ones who are showing that instinct are the ones who are vilified for losing the ball. Everything's controlled, everything's robotic, and you listen to the more tactical football podcasts, and apparently we've hit now the human ceiling for possession, which is 60% apparently. So what do we do now? We now look at corners, throw-ins, and set pieces. I noticed it at the under-21 match, this play for possession sort of centre routine. Brentford have been doing it as well, where they just hoof it into the corner from the centre spot to then gain territory from a throw on from the opposition right in the corners of their goal line. Care? What? Football has become now a glorified maths equation. How to get, 0.49 goals per game ratios from corners. Absolutely riveting stuff. Where are the 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗚s of today? Where's the Payets? Where's the John Moncurs? Where's the Carlos Teveses of this world? Where's that moment when you think, what on earth is he going to do with the ball next? And to be honest, many of the times the likes of the 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗚s and people like that probably didn't know what they were going to do with the ball at their feet. The 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗚 wearing his short backwards. He shorts backward when he's scoring worldies against Arsenal. Where's that? Well, let's be honest. Someone like 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗚, would he survive in modern football? He was pure theatre. He was a genius 1 minute, an absolute meltdown the next. VAR probably would have had him banned by Christmas, but my God, he made you feel something. When was the last time we had a player maybe who got us off our seat continually? Maybe someone like Payet. The bloke made corners and free kicks feel like they were absolute cinema. The anticipation of him taking a corner or a free kick. Nowadays, it's about getting into the box, possession based. But some of those free kicks, those curlers, are incredible. You see that little run up, and the whole ground would just go silent in anticipation of what was going to happen. That's entertainment. That's going to a game to be entertained. Moncur, you think about the energy, the flair, the chaos. We used to count the fingers on our hands when he came on the pitch from a sub to count how quickly he'd get a yellow card. Couldn't take your eyes off him. We don't have that anymore now. Today, we've got players who are doing 95% pass completion rates and being praised for their progressive metrics. It's impressive, but it's not fun. Would a player like 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗡𝗚 even get a contract nowadays? Probably not. He's too unpredictable. He's too emotional. He can't press in a structured phase, whatever that means. Football's traded personality for precision. Even the goals now look manufactured. We've now got, particularly this season, we've got, long throw routines being coached like they were NFL plays. Brentford's got blokes launching balls into the box like they're javelin throwers. And we've been told this is the new frontier of football. I mean, seriously, from going from 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗡𝗚, flicking it, bicycle kick into the top corner from, against Wimbledon, to analysts getting cited about, expected throws per 90 minutes. Seriously? Everything's been optimized. Every risk, every nuance has been coached out of the game. You're seeing it now with some of the, the academy players, guys like Preston Fearon. He just seems to be such a beautiful player of the football. He'll have that. Will be coached out of him in terms of getting into the first team. Nowadays, you can't even try Rabona without 10 blokes on the touchline shouting, why didn't he recycle possession? And that's one of the issues, I think, with someone like Lucas Paqueta. He's one of those guys who is trying to do something with the ball, but because he's losing the ball, he's getting vilified for it. It's not just the tactics either. I think social media has made everything feel louder, but flatter. Every week, there's a new crisis, there's a new villain, and a new bald fraud to mock. But the actual football just feels the same. Don't get me wrong, I'm proud of of our achievements, particularly under Moyes in a more pragmatic style. And again, I agree that the time is now for maybe a more structured, solid, hard to beat sort of defensive setup. But the reason being is because of the money in the football in Premier League. We have to stay in the Premier League. So in order to maintain that money, there has to be a desire to be hard to beat, to pick up draws, to keep clean sheets. But there's a little part of me that misses the unpredictability. I remember back in my day, we'd be a couple of goals down, for Harry Redknapp's side, and you're thinking, we might still win this one. Now we go 1-0 down, and I'm thinking, that's probably us down. But it's not just us. As I said, the whole league feels like that. Each match seems like it's an algorithm. Even the big clubs are just swapping like tactical templates, and someone does something and then everyone else follows suit. We used to watch football to be surprised. Now we're just waiting for the next data point. So here's the question to you, the lovely West Ham network. Would the likes of 𝗕𝗢𝗥𝗡𝗚 and Joe Cole and Trevor Morley and John Moncur, would they survive in football now? Will clubs take a chance on players who don't fit the system? You look at someone like Jack Grealish, and he's a dying breed. Would love him at West Ham. Football used to be about artists. It used to be about madmen. Every side had a hard man, and it was his hard man versus our hard man. You'd have battles like Vieira and Keane and people like, you don't get that anymore now. It's just system players. It used to be like, Miles David jazz, but now it's just like a synth track based on Excel formulas. I miss players who made mistakes, who made big mistakes, but at least they were trying to do something human. So, football is still great. I still love West Ham. I still watch it every week, but I miss the chaos. I miss the soul. Let me know in the comments. Who's the last true entertainer you remember watching in a West Ham shirt? And would they survive in today's game? Thanks for watching. Sound a little bit different, a little bit of a rant. Hopefully you agree with what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm, and hopefully it's not just an echo chamber. But I don't think it is. I think a lot of us genuinely feel the same about football, particularly in the last sort of 2 or 3 seasons. I'd say it's getting even worse as more and more money goes into the game. The general football as an entertainment prospect, because it is The trouble is, it's becoming a football business. And when you put business and money together, the entertainment value will decrease. Anyway, see you later, potatoes. Enjoy.